Now here's a video that won't make me a whole lot of new friends inside of the 2011 community, but today I need to say what pretty much nobody else will tell you about the Staccato 2011. This specifically is the XC version. I'm going to tell you the features of the gun. I'm going to take you to the range with me, tell you a little bit of the backstory about Staccato, and then at the end, I'm simply going to tell you whether I think these guns are worth buying or not. Now, one thing I'm going to be doing here soon is comparing this 2011 to a high-end 1911. I think that'll be a pretty fun video. I was going to include some parts of that in this one, but I think we're just going to save that for a completely different video because I think that will be a lot of fun. But at least after this one, you're going to know where I stand on Staccato and everything that goes into these. And of course, the questions to be answered that I will give you my opinion on. If you like what I do, consider subscribing, hit your notifications so you never miss one from me, and make sure you leave me your opinion, no matter if you agree or disagree, down below after the video. Let's go and get into it. Now, where did Staccato come from? Well, it actually started with a guy named Virgil Tripp back in the early 80s. He was making competition 1911s, but in the early 90s, specifically in 91, you know, this whole competition shooting thing really started to evolve and take off, and competition 1911s were a big part of that. So Sandy Strayer, who was an engineer, joined Tripp Research, and together they combined their name, Strayer Tripp Incorporated, and that made STI. Now, Strayer would only stay with the company from 91 until, I think, June of 94. He would branch off, partner with somebody else, and make his own company called SVI, which, of course, was competition now to STI. Then Tripp sold STI in 1997 and went off to start making 1911 magazines, which he still does today under Tripp Research. Now, the name 2011 was actually patented in 1994, I think is when they officially got it. That patent ran out in 2016, so you will see other companies that now make a 2011 style gun. But as far as I know, the trademark is still owned by Staccato to this day. So I think they're the only ones that can really put 2011 on the actual gun itself. So while the patent did run out, the trademark 2011 name still lies with them, so very similar to AR-15. It's still owned by Colt. So you'll notice that every other company will do M&P-15 or, you know, whatever their nomenclature may be. Same concept, but the name itself still owned by the original Staccato. And of course, they rebranded to Staccato in 2020. They came out with a Staccato series of pistols, and it was so popular that they rebranded their entire company from STI to Staccato. So, what kind of features do we have on this one specifically? So this being an XC, one of the first things that you will notice instantly is we actually have an island ported barrel on here. A lot of the guns from Staccato have a bull barrel. This one, of course, is designed with that single port up front. So the front fiber optic, Dawson Precision fiber optic, get that. It, of course, is attached to this island piece right here. So, of course, not only do you have the lightning cuts there to lighten the slide just a little bit, but also a really nice area where you can do press checks if you want to. Now, if you end up I don't know, let's say you're like thinking about spending this kind of money. If you go into a gun shop, somebody has one or whatever, the first thing you'll notice when you go to chamber check is just how smooth this gun feels. I mean, it literally feels like it's on, you know, glass rails or something. It's a whole nother thing. I mean, it just feels so freaking good. The only thing I can really compare it to that I've shot is the Sand Viper from Terran Tactical. Dude, it's hitting the same spot over and over and over and over and over. Some of y'all will remember that gun. That was a part of one of the giveaways we did back then. And that thing was just, yeah, probably the most incredible pistol I had ever shot at that time. Another thing that this gun has is their toolless kind of all-in-one recoil spring system here. So you don't really have to worry about anything coming apart on you. Now, of course, it does have a barrel link like a traditional 1911, but it's all one unit in there. So pretty interesting design and works as intended. So there is that. I think it's actually a lightened recoil spring on this one as well. Of course, this is designed to be a race and competition gun. We also have an optics cut, so you know you can order these with a variety of different optics: Delta Point Pros, Trijicon, RMR. This one's rocking the SRO. We have the blacked out rear sight there, and it does co-witness with that front fiber optic there, but of course the whole time I was just using the dot. Single action only, of course. 2.5 pound trigger. A lot of the guns on their site are roughly 4 to 4.5. The one on the XC, again, set up a little bit different, and if you blink too quickly, you will end up pulling that trigger. Talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. Now, one of the differentiating factors on the 2011, of course, is this screw right here. So basically, we have a two-piece polymer module, polymer lower here, and then of course our steel components are kind of all one setup that go around that. So the grip panels, and that's part of the 2011, right? It's designed to be modular as far as this goes. So on a 1911, you change the grip panels, right? And that's pretty much it, because it's a solid piece of steel, whereas this is polymer, and then of course it has steel inserts and it's wrapped around the action of the gun and all of your critical components. Rear serrations again are cut deeply into the slide, so no worries there at all. You know, they have a variety of different options on their site as far as like doing custom engravings. I think those are like $60 per engraving and all of that kind of stuff. But one that does come on the gun that I really like is the forward-facing stars and stripes. That's on the right-hand side right there. We have a single slotted rail up front and a full-length dust cover. Our magazine well is flared, and it comes with two 17-round mags standard. Magazine release works as it should. Mags fall out of the gun, no problem there. If we lock it back, because that's how they will release, it's a little slow to action, but it's not too bad. You know, you just kind of make sure that gun is how it should be, and they're not going to forcefully eject, but they'll get out of there fairly quickly. We have an ambidextrous safety, of course. You're going to run that cocked and locked if this is a gun that you end up carrying, or better yet, one of their carry models. Now, of course, these things are issued to police agencies in the United States, right? I want to say they did a video. It was as of 2023, I think 1,400 agencies carry a Staccato, which is interesting when we look at how this gun shoots. Also, we have our beaver tail, grip safety, all of that kind of stuff, pretty standard there. They've done a couple of changes from the 2019 version to the updated models, 2020 and beyond, I believe. So really nice there. Now you may think, because it's a double stack 1911, chambered in 9 by the way, that it might be a little wide in the hand. You know, a traditional 1911 single stack, you know, fits a lot of hands, you know, because it just has a really good feel and it points super naturally, right? Well, this gun does not feel like, I don't know, I'm trying to think, maybe like a FNX 45 Tactical, where that's a big, heavy, you know, bulging gun. I don't know, lack of better terms there, but you know what I'm saying. It just it feels like a lot of gun. This one is there, but I feel like just kind of some of the relief cuts back here and how they shaped it, and considering how far back that trigger is, I had no issues with that at all. So really nice to see that. Grip texturing is aggressive, but it's not too bad, right? So if I were to carry something like this, I'd probably want a shirt between my skin and that, but it's really not that bad at all. I have a little relief cut here, right? It's a little bit flared to help in the extraction and ejection process there. So that is pretty good. And overall, the gun is sexy, right? Black on black. Really love the design. They did a fantastic job, and I was watching some of the actual building process that they're willing to share. And like a lot of precision 1911s, high-end 1911s, high-end 2011s, you start with a solid block of steel. In some of your lower end guns, and when I say lower end, you're still talking, close to $1,000 a lot of the times, up to, $1,500 maybe. Basic GI 1911s may use MIM or casted parts or whatever. Every part in here, from the small parts to the main ones, are forged. So that is a much heavier duty process, and that's going to allow this gun to stand up to much more abuse, right? And it's going to make sure that it's more heavy duty than what you'll find in some of those other guns. I think they consider these like semi-custom guns because there is some hand fitting that goes along with these. Let's talk about the way it shoots, because when I borrowed this from a friend of mine, he was like, hey man, don't be mad at me when you shoot this gun and you realize that you have to buy one. Well, I've heard that before. I was like, yeah, well, I'll be the judge of that, And then I shot my first magazine. Wow. Why? I mean, that is incredible. Now, I was seriously blown away. I felt like I could not miss a single shot. I wasn't exceptionally far. You're talking about 10 to 12 yards, somewhere in there, but I started to feel a little bad for those targets because I was not missing with this gun. And one thing I'll talk about, trying to not shoot off the reset. When you hit the trigger, right, you have just maybe, 1/16 or an eighth of an inch take up. You get to the wall, and it ain't much, dude. 2.5 pounds on a trigger is not much. This is a 70 series too, by the way. There's no firing pin block. So, reset. Again, probably, maybe an eighth of an inch, I guess. I don't know. Back to the reset, and you're back to the wall. And that wall, it's just so freaking crisp. It's really hard to tell you how good it is, even though I try to show you. It's just hard to tell you without you putting it in your hands and actually feeling it. It's very impressive. And even, a 4-pound trigger, or 4.5-pound trigger is really good. 2.5 though, although maybe too light for my personal taste as far as carry. If I'm at the range, dude, one of their things is, these guns are just easier to shoot, and I believe that. It is just easier to shoot when you have such a crisp trigger, such little recoil. Match that with that porting, little bit heavier gun. Obviously, I think we're at the 37, 38 ounces, unloaded, no optic, none of that, right? So we got a bunch of weight to help soak up the recoil, light and slide this thing. Yeah, it's on another level when you take it to the range. It really is. Now, I shot some lighter loads through it initially. I shot some like 115 Fiocchi. It ran fine with that. Then when I ran the MagTech, it didn't like that too much. And typically with these guns, I run 124s. That day I just did not have any, so it is what it is. I'm glad it ran well with the Fiocchi that I was running. And so that was good to see, that it would at least run some 115s, because a lot of these guns, they don't like the lighter loads. So even though you're talking about a gun, the base gun is $4,300, I still wouldn't hold that against it, because that's not what these guns are necessarily designed to run. 124s and up typically is where I see the best luck. 124s really are almost perfect for this gun, at least for what I do. So, not going to hold it against this gun, because again, they're not designed for that. Way the gun points, The way the gun feels, the way it shoots, I mean, it really is. It is a precision gun. Now, as good as this pistol shot, and as highly as I will speak on it, because it really is next level pistol shooting, the thing I want to mention that maybe not a lot of people will is the extra requirements for a gun like this. Now, I know there's agencies that use these guns, but one thing you need to keep in mind is the type of ammo you run. Regular maintenance, replacing springs, making sure you buy higher end magazines. You know, possibly tuning mags. I don't know how many companies require you to do that now, but that is something that you're going to have to consider. You're going to want to pay attention, you know, to the ammo you're running. I found that 124s do really good in guns like this, 147s even. So you're going to want to do that. You have a lightened slide, so you need to have enough power to get that back. I also had some double feeds and stuff too, so that is something to be considered, right? It's kind of like a high-end vehicle, high-end sports car, a luxury car, right? They're going to take a little bit more maintenance, and while they may do things better, quicker, faster, whatever, they still require more maintenance to do those and may not run as long without regular maintenance. So you think about a Glock, you know, you put a couple things of oil on it, you're right, and you just freaking go to town. You can bury a Glock. I say Glock and Smith & Wesson, any of these, you know, good polymer frame striker fire guns, freaking bury them in the ground, you pull them out, you shoot them, they're probably going to work, right? Gun like this is going to require a little bit more. Either way, this thing shot really incredible. So with all of that in mind, the question is, why would anybody really buy this gun? Well, let me tell you what I think it's really good for. First of all, if I'm going to teach somebody to shoot, I want a gun that's going to be, you know, it's got some weight to it, so it's going to help suck up the recoil, something that is easier to shoot. Probably not a 2.5 pound trigger, because I want to teach them proper trigger control. And while this is easier to shoot on, I would much rather have something 4.5 pounds, something a little bit more deliberate when you pull that trigger. But either way, proper trigger control and finger placement, obviously, I could see myself doing that. You know, sweeping the safety on and off, going through those steps. They may not have to do it with their carry gun, but a gun in this size configuration and this size gun all the way around with this much weight, I think would be a great, you know, training gun, just with a little bit more weight to the trigger to engage that. Competition obviously is what this gun is for, and of course they have their P series, which is more of a all-around, you know, good pistol. It can be carried, and then, you know, it's going to be lighter than this, about 5 ounces lighter, or you can get the aluminum versions, which is like 10 ounces lighter than this. So of course you can go that route. You can go with their carry models too, but if I'm going to have a gun for competition, this is going to be one of the guns that I'm going to consider for sure. And while I would absolutely love to own one of these, when I think about spending $4,300 on a gun, I look at this and I'm like, okay, you know, it's not a gun I'm going to carry. I probably wouldn't use it for home defense. If I'm using a pistol anyways, we all know that, you know, your best home defense is going to be a shotgun, double-aught buck, right? That's going to probably be your best choice. But if I only have, you know, a pistol for home defense, fine, right? We can attach a light, we can do all that. I think personally the trigger is just too light for what I would like. If I was to run one of these as a home defense and, like I said, training gun, I'd want probably the 4.5 pound trigger, because that's still a really solid trigger weight, and yet it's going to take a little bit more pressure, a little bit more deliberate to get that trigger pulled back to the rear, of course, and make your shot. That's just my personal preference when it comes to concealed carry or home defense. But again, talking about the money aspect, I think about, you know, a rifle, high-end rifle, right? That's going to allow me to, yes, be a defensive tool. Yes, something I can take to the range. Something I can extend out to, or even do CQB, or any number of things. I guess if you've ever seen those memes where it's like, there will be signs, you know, if I ever hit the lottery or something. Well, if I end up buying one of these, there will be signs for sure with me. And I think that's what it would be. I think if I was a competition shooter and I was actively doing that, making money from that, for sure I would probably invest into something like this. Otherwise, you know, there's a lot of great guns that you can get for under 2,000, and keep in mind that it's not just the XC in their lineup, right? They do have guns that are $2,500, right? And that's still a lot of money, but that's more reasonable for something like this, just in my humble opinion. $4,300 on a pistol. You know, once you get up over 35, I don't know, 4 grand, man, that's a really far stretch. But when you're talking about high-end semi-custom 1911s, those are going to be 2 grand, you know? So that's not unheard of in this space. And when it comes to 1911s or versus 2011s, you can see some clear advantages with the 2011. So maybe a P model or something like that, I could see, all right, yeah, that's, you know, that to me makes more sense. This one is just like upper echelon, right? And so if I were to compare this to something like a, you know, a CZ Shadow optics ready, Shadow 2 optics ready version or something like that, I just find that that gun would probably serve me just as well, because that's a fantastic shooting gun. And while it's not nearly as nice or smooth for defensive purposes, I think that gun would be that's an incredible platform. So anyways, I don't know, man. I struggle with this one specifically in that cost. But of course, I want to hear from y'all, man, because even though I really love this and I'm glad I had the opportunity to shoot it, if it were my money, I'd probably be going with the P series and save a little bit of bread there, or a rifle, or maybe even another type of gun over something like this. But make no mistake about it, there's a reason people buy Staccato. And when you are considering the best of the best when it comes to the way you shoot and the gun you shoot and how this thing shoots and the features it possesses, I love American made companies and I really appreciate what they do. A little bit too rich for my blood, yes, but I still see the appeal, and I see it more now than what I did before, for sure. So if you have a friend that owns one, maybe you can go to the range with them. Maybe they'll let you borrow theirs, and you can actually see for yourself how good these guns truly are, because it is really next level pistol shooting, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to do it. If you have a different opinion, make sure you leave that down below. If you agree, leave that as well. Big thanks to you guys. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.